Hi, welcome to the Bridges 2014 poetry reading. This is the fourth poetry reading I'm organizing for Bridges, and it's the first time that I'm not able to attend in person. But I prepared for you a video which contains my poems and also 12 other mathematical poets, some of whom read in previous Bridges. And I hope you are going to enjoy this as the first part of the poetry reading. The preparation really was helped by Steve Stam, who put everything together, and of course each poet prepared their own video. As you can see, I'm not an expert preparing a video. Mike Naylor is going to show you the movie, and then he's going to run the continuation of the poetry reading. Now, before I let the first poem read, I would like to call to your attention two poetry anthologies where you might read mathematical poem by many of the poets who are reading in this virtual reading. And some of the same poem and some different poems. And let me try to show it to you. I'm not sure if I can, but let me try. Here it is. One is Strange Attractors, Poems of Love and Mathematics, edited by myself and JoAnne Growney, who is one of the poets who is going to read at this reading. The other one is a more recent anthology. Strange Attractors was published in 2008. The more recent anthology was published last year. It's a Bridges 2013 poetry anthology. Was published by Tessellation Publishers, whose publisher is the artist, a Bridges artist, Robert Fatauer, and he has the book in the book display, and I hope you'll enjoy the poetry reading and afterwards reading the poems in the anthologies. So now I'll let the first poet read. Enjoy. Bye.
I'm going to read a couple of poems from a book, Fred and Blossom, which is about love and aviation in the 1930s. And Fred and Blossom are a young couple who decided rather impulsively that they could start an aircraft design business. And that involved rather a steep learning curve and also involved them in learning about mathematics and aerodynamics. So how do you design an aeroplane? Look for precious little help from birds, except that silhouette of teardrop body, tapered wings, a tail that fans out aft for balance. You can't make their hollow bones or feathers flexibility, or be a breath-filled structure light enough to flap yourself to flight. Watch other people's work. There's much the miller or the yachtsman knows about the shape and trim of sails, to stop them breaking when they borrow from the wind sufficient force to force flat heavy stones to turn or drive a boat across the waves, skipping like a child's thrown pebble. Beneath its pencil-shaded skin, your paper aeroplane requires a skeleton of ribs and spars. So ask a carpenter about a way to reconcile the yin and yang of weight and strength. A shipwright knows how hull and keel support the mast and canvas catching air in curves. You have to choose an aerofoil from catalogues by lift and drag and angle of attack, work out the stress at spanwise stations, fix a size for fin and rudder, check the elevator pitching moment, make the facet pinwheels spin with calculations. Fred and Blossom's firm was very successful for about 15 years, but finally collapsed financially after World War II, and the collapse was described as being somewhat like an aerodynamic disaster, with some statistics thrown in. The end of the firm. When power's lost at 15,000 feet above a thundercloud, altitude's your only asset, and gravity's the creditor who's out to ruin you and must be paid off as slowly as you can. What matters is your attitude and glide slope. They must cut through drag so lift's enough to stave off loss of height, and forward speed stays more than downward. Equilibrium's non-linear, as drag and lift change coefficients when descending into thicker air. The swirling gusts are head or tail and random as a spinning penny, spiral down to even out the odds on distance or endurance. Do you want to get down fast and risk a dead stick landing through the sort of dirty turbulence that threw a pilot through his canopy at Scarborough? Or do you want to stay aloft and hope for calm conditions, trusting to the built-in skills that saved you in an unrigged Martinside with a broken throttle?
Hello, I'm Tatiana Bonch-Osmolovskaya. I got interested in mathematics and literature since childhood. So I have finished mathematical school in Moscow, which was organized by academic Kolmogorov. Then I graduated from Moscow Institute of Physical Technologies, which is the best physical university in Russia. But the years of perestroika and post-Soviet life took me far away from physics. So I studied also French literature and philosophy, and then I got a degree on writing about Raymond Queneau's 100,000 billions of poems. And I translated it into Russian and continue working in this direction. Some call this area combinatorial literature. The recent name for this is ergodic literature, with authors like Georges Perec, Raymond Queneau, Vladimir Nabokov, Lewis Carroll, Flann O'Brien, and others working in this literature. I also, as a philologist, write about it, study it, and as a writer, I sometimes contribute to it. So today I will read you one of my poems and will show you some visual poems. Here is a poem which is called Vase Maze. You can see that it's a bit of visual poem too. It is devoted to the painting of my friend, American artist John Higley. Vase Maze to John Higley. Enter. Ray reflects from the plates, falling into an area's corner of space. Space rotates clockwise, turning the other facets. Facets are transparent, letting the ray through, holding it, then thickening apparently at one edge. Edge becomes a prism, breaking the ray, splitting it into visible spectrum. Spectrum shine like a rainbow, from violet on one side to red on the other edge. Edges move towards each other, reflecting, dissolving, drawing dangerously close to facets. Facet tinkle with silvery song, filling the silent space. Space breeze, returning to sight and hasty rain. I see you. And here the visual poems. This one is called Summer Symphony. Another one here is obviously Love and Hate. And the last one I want to show you is on Sarah Glaz. Thank you for your attention, and have a good time. Thanks.
Hi everybody, it's really nice to be here, or rather, I wish I could be here, right? But I'm glad to be in the video. Thanks Sarah for doing this. I'm Marion Cohen. I teach at Arcadia, and it might be of interest to know that I teach a course called Mathematics in Literature that I developed and thoroughly enjoy teaching. So I'm going to read 3 poems. One of them comes from my book, Crossing the Equal Sign, which consists solely of math poems. These poems are untitled. I feel so sorry for the insides of things. I imagine them sweating and cramping. I hear them trying to flex. I know from complex analysis that sometimes outsides determine the insides. And I think maybe the insides are tired of being determined. And most things are inside. Most things are encased. I am afraid most things are alive. I would like to go around rescuing all the insides. I would like to dig into everything and pull the insides outside, but there is not enough outside to go around. If I can't rescue them, maybe I can put them out of their misery. I know I can't shoot them, but I can try to squash them, or I can go around injecting poison into them. But what kind of poison works for this form of life? The next poem is one of my several sequels to that poem in other books. Actually, this is in a forthcoming book called Lights I Have Loved. I hit it lucky this winter. I have actually 2 forthcoming books. Anyway, this is from Lights I Have Loved. The poem is called Deep Mathematics. Here I go again, rescuing the insides, or trying to. Not all the irrationals between 0 and epsilon. Not all the functions which are everywhere continuous but nowhere differentiable. Not all the true statements that are crying out for new axioms. But this narrow tunnel where no one has been. No microscope can detect these cells. No telescope can reach these stars. No one else can mercy kill these insides, and neither can I. There is no poison for this form of life. But there is anesthesia, and I can inject it again and again. And this last poem is from the other book that's forthcoming, which is called Sizes Only Slightly Distinct. And yes, that comes from a math dream that I had. It's called Teaching Observation. And the quote, not in the poem, from the person evaluating me or observing me, not at Arcadia where I teach, but another institution, said, you spend 20 minutes telling them how wonderful it all is. And this is actually meant to be a kind of lament, perhaps a criticism about the whole system, some aspects of it, which forces us to rush rather than telling us how wonderful it all is, telling ourselves and our students how wonderful it all is. So here's the quick poem, Teaching Observation. I'm sorry, it is wonderful how we can get around both the vertical line rule and the horizontal line rule, how the curve can flower, spiral, and cross itself again and again, how we can now make any pretty picture we want. Yes, it is all very wonderful, but okay, I promise I won't ever again waste 20 minutes. And thank you for letting me in on the big secret, how to get through the syllabus, by not telling them how wonderful it all is.
Hello again. I am Sarah Glaz. I am faculty in the mathematics department of the University of Connecticut. And I'm going to read you my poem, Calculus, that was inspired by teaching about 5 years of calculus in a row, in which I got to know the subject very well, and so did my students, I hope. So here is the poem, Calculus. I tell my students the story of Newton versus Leibniz, the war of symbols lasting 5 generations, between the continent and British Isles, involving deeply hard sensibilities and grievous blows to national pride on such weighty issues as publication priority and working system of logical notations. Whether the derivative should be denoted by a prime, an apostrophe atop the right-hand corner of a function, evaluated by Newton-Flax's method delta y by delta x, or by a formal quotient of differentials, dy dx, intimating future possibilities, terminology that guides the mind. The genius of both men lies in grasping simplicity out of the swirl of ideas guarded by chaos, becoming channels through which her light pour clarity on the relation binding slope of tangent line to area of planar region lying below a curve. The fundamental theorem of calculus, basis of modern mathematics, claim nothing else. While Leibniz, suave, debonair philosopher and politician, published his proof to jubilant cheers of continental followers, the Isle ceased unnerved. They knew of Newton's secret files, locked in deep secret drawers, for fear of theft and stranger paranoid delusions, hiding an earlier version of the same result. The battle escalated to public accusation, charges of blatant plagiarism, excommunication from the Royal Mass Society, a few blackened eyes, no duels. Enraged for long after both men were buried, splitting isle from continent, barring uniform progress, till black bile drain and turbulent spirits be calmed. Calculus, Latin for small stones, primitive means of calculation, evolving to abaci, later to principle of enumeration, advanced by widespread use of the Hindu-Arabic numeral system employed to this day. As practiced by algebristas, barbers and bone setters in medieval Spain. Before calculus came the sigma notion, sums of infinite yet countable series, and culminating in addition of uncountable many dimensional line segments. The integral, snake, first to search for knowledge at any price. That abstract concepts applicable at start merely to the unseen, unsensed objects, orbits of distant stars, could generate intense earthly passion is inconceivable today, when mathematics is considered a dry discipline, depleted of life sap, devoid of emotion, alive only in convoluted brain cells of weird scientific minds. Thank you.
I'm going to read a poem from The Mathematical Intelligencer. It is an ode to my number theory teacher, Winnie Lee. I've sat in on 4 of her classes. While I was writing this poem, I was reading lots of books about Central Eurasia, and especially the Taklamakan Desert. Elliptic curves and modular forms converge south of the Taklamakan. A skein of silk amid the iron and bronze weapons, the trade routes brought my number theory teacher, Dr. Lee, who writes faster with white chalk on the blackboard than any human being I ever followed across a proof, raising clouds of chalk dust at the furrowed extremities of each long expedition towards a theorem. Camels cough and huddle by the caravanserai in moonlight. I carry cough drops with me in my book bag under notes, so I won't interrupt her train of thought by sneezing, and try to copy every line she writes, as well as those brief detours on heuristics, or her mild evaluations of depth, or usefulness or interest of conjectures, placed unexpectedly like waterfalls down clefts in limestone, or her infrequent, offhand explanations of the way she generalized a printed remark of Serre from gamma 0p, p prime, indexing groups of matrices, to any level. How algebraic form can complement the smooth analysis that frames the proof, the complex upper half-plane poised like some great violet dome on whose connected face the primes come out, appearing one by one in constellations above the Taklamakan desert, where the silk route ran from Chan between the winding yellow river and the great but perished wall, to break against the lovely gates of Kashgar. And this is a poem from the Bridges Anthology. I wrote this in the cafe on the Rue Gay-Lussac, near the abandoned storefront of the Galerie Orphée, around the corner from the École Normale Supérieure. Exhausted, footsore, sweetening my coffee only with sugar, suddenly I see that memory has lost its long allure. I used to spend whole days remembering, expecting backwards, painting my shabby hopes with lipstick and mascara, trompe-l'oeil glamour. Oh, Paris. Now it's only another city where restaurants are dear, the gutters full of rain and smithereens, the clerks deployed on every front to say, "Ah non, madame, c'est impossible, vraiment, je regrette." Where Notre Dame is blanked by scaffolding. All those imaginary dimensions heaped above my little life, like extra stories hidden behind the gray-blue mansard roofs. Clouds crowning Sacré-Cœur, sheaves over rings, cotangent spaces kissing their manifold. How finally they collapse. Goodbye, goodbye. How finally future overshadows past at 100. What was she expecting, that girl I was? Oh, honestly, I forget. Memory scatters in the sky like sparrows, or sinks like rain in gutters, where the drowned underground river falls of Paris vanish.
Hello, my name is JoAnne Growney. I'm in the U.S., in Silver Spring, Maryland, and will be presenting two poems. The first is a longish poem entitled My Dance is Mathematics, written to honor Emmy Nuta, an algebraist of the 19th century. The second, a short light verse entitled Small Powers of 11 Are Palindromes. Amalie Emmy Nuta was born in Germany in 1882 and educated there. She fled the Nazis to the U.S. in 1933 and died April 14, 1935, in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Here is My Dance is Mathematics. They called you Der Nuta, as if mathematics was only for men. In 1964, nearly 30 years past your death, I saw you in a spotlight in a World's Fair mural, Men of Modern Mathematics. Colleagues praised your brilliance, but after they had called you fat and plain, rough and loud. Some mentioned kindness and good humor, though none in your lifetime admitted it was you who led the way to axiomatic algebra. Direct and courageous, lacking self-concern, elegant of mind, a poet of logical ideas. At a party when you were 8 years old, you spoke up to solve a hard math puzzle. Fearless, you set yourself apart. I followed you. I saw you forced to choose between mathematics and other romance. For women only, this exclusive standard. I heard fathers say, dance with Emmy just once, early in the evening. Old Max is my friend, and his daughter likes to dance. If a woman's dance is mathematics. She dances alone. Mother said, "Don't tease. That strange one's heart is kind. She helps her mother with the house and cannot help her curious mind." Teacher said, "She's smart, but stubborn, contentious and loud, a theory builder not persuaded by our ideas." Students said, "She's hard to follow, bores me." A few stood firm and built new algebras on her exacting formulations. In spite of Emmy's talents, always there were reasons not to give her rank or permanent employment. She's a pacifist, a woman. She's a woman and a Jew. Her abstract thinking is female and abstruse. Today, history books proclaim that Nuta is the greatest mathematician her sex has produced. They say she was good for a woman. And now, on a lighter note, here is Small Powers of 11 are palindromes. Few people talk of mathematics at cocktail parties, though perhaps some sort of literary number. How many lines for a sonnet, or how many weeks for Life of Pi on the Times bestseller list? Not many care that 6 is perfect, 5 is Catalan, or the square root of 3 is irrational. How many bright and witty are overlooked when we, from France, Japan, or mathematics, must dim our brilliance in a second language, hearing chatter of prime rib to die for and prime interest rates, and never getting to share the latest news of twin primes? Quick now, can you name an odd cube that's a palindrome?
"231. Innumerable Thoughts. To JoAnne Growney. In a number of ways, I am one. In the least of ways, I am O. In the manner of the expression, I am found out. 1 multiplied by 50 multiplied by 365 plus 8 plus 231 equals 18,489. I move toward infinity, but never to it or even close. I want to bet that some words were numbers too, for I ate many at breakfast. 18,489 minus whatever I've forgotten, divided by whatever I've made up, sort of equals 49, plus or minus. A Pentecost of memories, but not quite 50, so not quite me. Life and poems are made out of counting. The pieces, the lines, the digits, the spaces. I saw since a child myself as one body, one head, one nose, but 2 nostrils, 1 mouth, 1 penis, apologies, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 arms, 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 feet, 10 fingers, 10 toes. That's about as detailed as a body might be broken down for the purposes of counting and making sure each piece was in place. I might be less than or equal to well, but I am greater than or equal to productive. I am wandering here. In these words to you, I am thinking, not through but around a few thoughts in the vicinity of insight. So I must admit to you that this letter does not equal a poem, even though I mean it to be, for a poem without numbers is a poem without meter or meaning or structure, or the lack of structure that the best poems have, by being completely controlled by an unnamed source, such as how I am always one. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, eight. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 8, 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. 7, 8, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. 8, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. 4, 4, 4, 4. 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Professor Lesser from the University of Texas at El Paso. I write math songs to spark student memory and motivation. This one helps students recall and distinguish the two most common formulas for a circle, to the tune that help them learn the alphabet. Take your finger round the jar, circumference equals 2 pi r. For area we multiply r squared by that number pi. Twinkle, twinkle, you're a star, knowing math will take you far. Now this jingle defines a central but often misunderstood concept in statistics. It is key to know what p-value means. It's the chance with an L you obtain data that's at least that extreme. Now an original inspired by the Pythagorean idea that numerical ratios govern music and the cosmos. It's called Music of the Spheres. Today was a rainbow day, horizon lean the right way tonight in moonlight. We sleep beneath the stars beside, oh, it's amazing. By the sea, stargazing, my guiding inspiration all through the years has been music and the music of the spheres. Tides are getting strong, I get my guitar to sing you a song. The notes that bring peace are numbers from ancient Greece. So you're a pattern in the path of Saturn. I marvel at the harmonies that caress our ears, sweet music and the music of the spheres. simple tune while stars twinkle around the moon like vibrating strings. Resonate with all these things, oh, chords and notes, words and hopes, spinning in the mystery of why we cry our tears for music and the music of the spheres.
Hello, my name is Alice Major. I'm recording this in my rather messy office in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. The poem I'd like to share is about math and about my city. It's from this book called The Occupied World, and the math in it concerns the idea of pi. Specifically, pi as it applies to measuring the length of a river. Or perhaps we should say the lengths, because it's about the ratio between the end-to-end length and the sort of meandering around the curve kind of length. The poem is called Locate the Site. To find a city, make a chance encounter. The plane sails in above the setter-colored fields, swathed in concentric lines of harvest, circle on square. I find myself returning to this place that wasn't home. I came to escape somewhere else, to scrape a little gold from the sidewalk, a little frost from the windscreen, meant to pocket these shavings, shiftless change that would melt and leave me unchanged. X marks the spot on the treasure map. Marked here, on this bend among so many, the only city in 1,000 miles of river. A site decided through the puzzling ratio of random chance to fate. The plane's wings slide in the angle of light. Below, the river plows its brown furrow, a wedding of land and water. The North Saskatchewan, the South Saskatchewan, rivers like long legs of a compass splayed across the prairies. 1,000 miles of river. How to take that measure? Arithmetic of river, aftermath of current. As the river bends into cliff, cuts its path rounder and rounder, rolls back on itself, but cannot flow in circles, trips up, cuts off an oxbow, snaps its path straight again. Should we measure length as geese or gulls fly, or as a leaf would float each elemental curve and bend, both these distances tied up in one another by the ratio of circle to the line bound taut across it. Runways mark a skewed cross on prairie. Wheels rush at tarmac. We arc in our seats, thrust forward and backward at the same time. I collect my circulating luggage from the baggage belt's meander, cut through the swirl of strangers and their bright foreign chatter. Head for the taxi stand. To find a city, accept the guidance of whatever calculating God has taken you in care. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Naylor. This is The Last Crumb. We'd invited them all, but who thought they'd all come to Zeno's first conference on infinite sums? We'd gathered together in Aleph Null Square, and an infinite number of people were there. The people were hungry. They'd been there all day, and Mrs. McMurdo had lost the buffet. It rolled off the mountain, and all that we found was one chocolate chip cookie that fell on the ground. George, the main speaker, asked me for the news, and I said I'm afraid that it's simply no use. One cookie is all that survived the buffet, and one cookie will not feed these people. No way. George looked at the cookie, and George looked at me, and George shook his head and said, I disagree. Let me look in my suitcase and find something quick. I think I have just the right tool for this trick. Then he pulled from his suitcase a very strange thing, a tool with a handle and one tiny string. Have you ever seen something like this in your life? It's a Pennington ultrafine portable knife. He told me this tool was especially made with a single-dimensional string for a blade. This knife will cut anything smaller than small, so we'll just keep on slicing till we feed them all. He looked very pleased, but I sadly said, no, there's an infinite number of people, you know. If you cut up that cookie, I don't care how small, there's not enough pieces. You can't feed them all. Well, I guess we'll just see, he replied with a laugh, as he carefully sliced our last cookie in half. He yelled, form one line and prepare to move fast. There's only one cookie, our last. Then he gave me a stopwatch and said, would you mind? I'd be ever so grateful if you'd watch the time, for I'll double my speed as I slice up each one, and in just 60 seconds the job will be done. He gave the first half to a man with green hair, who danced away quickly and flipped through the air. George looked at the half that was left and said, yes, I will have this again into quarters no less. A googly-eyed man bellied up with his plate, but George said, be patient, you'll just have to wait. For just 30 seconds, not 1 second more, then I'll give you 1/4 of that cookie for sure. Now I was puzzled and worried, and how? George, now you've done it, we won't make it now. You've given up half our cookie is gone, and with all of these folks it will take far too long. But George said, don't worry, you'll soon understand, as he handed a 4th to the googly-eyed man. With a flick of his Pennington ultrafine blade, the 4th became 8ths with the cut that he made. The next one in line was a girl with one shoe. 15 seconds, he said, then I'll have some for you. He looked at his watch and he looked up at me. Timing is everything, as you will soon see. If I took, say, 1 second to hand out each bite, then we'd be here forever plus half of the night. But I'll slice down my time as I slice up each one, and in just 60 seconds, the job will be done. He gave her 1/8, which she dropped in her shoe, as he sliced the remaining piece neatly in two. A monkey bounced up with his hat and a cup. 1/16 is yours when 8 seconds are up. As he gave the next piece, he looked over at me. I needn't start slow, but it helps, you agree? I'm about to get busy, I hope you don't mind. There are so many people and such little time. A juggler came forward, and just as he reckoned, 4 seconds later got 1/32. Up stepped a boy from the far frozen north, who 2 seconds later got 1/64. In only 1 second, the next guest was fed, a man with a large tambourine for his head. Quickly and neatly, George split up the rest, and in just half a second, he fed the next guest. A lollipop girl and a mandolin man, a witch made of matchsticks and empty tin cans, A teacher, a doctor, a man with an owl, a woman dressed up in a large paper towel, a monk and a mermaid, a pink centipede. The faces were coming with dizzying speed. A fireman, a waitress, a pig with a drum. Faster and faster and faster they'd come. George kept on cutting, and to my surprise, the pieces were down to molecular size. His hands were a blur as the faces sped by, here and then gone in the blink of an eye. The air crackled with static and sizzled with heat. The people whizzed by with incredible speed. The ground shook and trembled, a deafening roar, then a flash, and a boom, and then nothing more. George lay on the ground with his feet in the air, and a smile on his face as smoke rose from his hair. You did it, I said. Yes, you did it, no doubt. By splitting in half, why, you'll never run out. You could do it again for as long as you please, forever and ever and ever, with ease. Now I know you are tired, but do one more thing. Please cut me a slice with that ultrafine string. Oh, goodness, said George. It's too late, you can't dine. There would have been plenty had you stepped in line. I'm sorry, he said, but you see it's all gone. I don't have infinity, pieces plus one. I chuckled. That's funny, but you and I know. Surely something's remaining. It couldn't all go. Even though that last crumb might be so very small, just by cutting in half, you cannot cut them all. He looked at me strangely. It's gone, there's no more. But please, take a look if you'd like to be sure. So I peered in his hand, and he gave me a wink. And you know what I saw? Well, what do you think? I'm Mike Naylor, and this was The Last Crumb.
Hi, my name is Eveline Pye. I'm a retired statistics lecturer from Glasgow Caledonian University in Scotland. My first two poems are about my teaching experiences. The first is called Solving Problems. How do you know the right thing to try, he says, jabbing paper with his finger. Good question, I say, playing for time as I have no answer he wants to hear. Solving these equations is part intuition, but first you learn to manipulate X's and Y's until decisions are made in your fingers, not your head, like typing an access code at the ATM, changing gear in the car, or signing a check, until it all becomes muscle memory, the same way Rubens painted hands again and again, or Keats scribbled rhyme after rhyme. And then you go with the flow. And if you're lucky, there is a sweet, sweet moment as the plum falls into your eager hands. And if not, you try and try, on and on, until your head bursts. In this next poem, I'm back in our maths summer school. Love of algebra. She says, you know how you get it and then you forget it? And I smile, nod, but really I don't. Can't even imagine. How does a dancer forget dancing? The singer forget singing? How could I ever not know how to solve simultaneous equations? It would be like forgetting how to breathe, or laugh, or love. You'd have to dissect my brain, scour out layer after layer of tissue with steel wool. And even then, if you left me one tiny cell, the knowledge would grow back. And if you were to succeed to wipe out every trace, I'd be a lost soul. I'd never give up. I'd chew on my pencil night and day to recapture that feeling, that moment when I grasped the lifeline. For me, statistical analysis is not a purely logical process, and I've tried to describe this in my next poem, Numerical Landscape. Like a tracker, I smell the earth on my fingers, listen for the slightest echo as I stare out at a world where bell-shaped curves loom as mountains and negative exponentials foretell dangerous descents. Imminent disaster. All around, cliff edges crash down to restless seas, while a solitary outlier shines in the southern sky, a freak of random sampling or a guiding light. Are others buried deep, confounded by experimental design? Or my path, a decision tree, so many branches spring from its trunk, so many choices. Statistics feels like poetry, endless searching, never-ending uncertainty.
Hi, my name is Amy Uyematsu, and I'm going to read the poem entitled Mobius Strip. There's no way to know where I start or end. What appears to be outside and so obviously true as a trick, curving like a slow-moving figure eight that somehow turns inside out. I can try to force things apart, but at great personal risk, for I'll sever myself in two, clean through the heart, or hurl and spin out to the blue, only to boomerang right back. Foolishly, I think myself closer to the basic secret when I find something far too revealing, that demanding voice I want no one to hear but me. As I reach further down, pull a gasp clean through, all the way up from toes to my belly and throat, an ache so real I can hardly breathe. But I won't stop unfurling, not when a seductive turf tempers and ripples before me. Then in a wink I vaulted away, only to find myself chasing along my edges again, as I grope for any tear in the surface, finger the air for some invisible thread, come so near as a hair's breadth from this riddle with my name, born in a half twist, waving me in. Thank you. Hi, my name is Amy Uyematsu, and I'd like to read Infinity to the Nth Power. Impossible to grasp, yet I'm sure it exists. Sure is the fact that I won't be around in 2047, which would make me a century old, and my little grandsons nearing middle age. I know about infinity whenever I admire a passion flower, feel myself pulled into its oddly perfect symmetry, or ponder snowflakes, shooting stars, and soap bubbles. Scientists tell us there are different kinds of infinities. Some are flat, others hunchback, inflating, explosive. Mathematicians are the real jokesters when it comes to playing with the mind. How counting from 1 to forever is somehow smaller than the set of all values between 1 and 2. Or as I used to ask my students, take half of a half of a half and never stop. Some notions of the infinite can rattle the nerves, like the possibility there are many Earths and someone exactly like you or me with a totally opposite or identical life. Or there are galaxies of multiplying gods, planets that will never be at war. And what about time? These last hours I count in my brief life. The way grief can make time endless, and delight mere seconds which tickle and tease us in unending supply. Old man Pythagoras was insecure about the whole matter, deeming the finite masculine and good, while infinity was feminine. Both had to be subjugated as if either could. I rather like being a woman who tries to embrace the ever-emerging infinite, especially when it comes to love and my own unfolding of wonder after wonder. Thank you.